What's up? Welcome back. Told you guys I'm gonna drop a few videos before I'm done this cycle. And I said this cycle, I just mean this 2-3 months, not this incarnation. I just mean this 2-3 month cycle where I might be inspired to make YouTube videos, and then you may not see me for another 6-7 months. So, um, in this video, I'm gonna talk about something no one talks about because 99% of them are victims of this shit, right? And it's enlightenment. Enlightenment has become this cheap, generic term that every motherfucker uses, right? And it's this term that all spiritual people, a lot of spiritual people, who maybe have been reading spiritual books for 5-10 years or even meditating for, fuck it, I don't even care, meditating for 30 years, right? You do this and you then feel that you're superior to a person in the matrix, right? A person who has no no spiritual curiosity, no nothing, right? So you say, I've been practicing for a long time, right? Or whatever you call practicing, whether it's meditation, whether it's reading, whether it's whatever, right? Whether it's pretending to be a fake musician, whatever the case might be, right? You say, I've been doing this shit forever. And so then what largely happens is, and let's be honest, outside of spiritual material, nothing really changes for you, right? And so sometimes you could become even more imbalanced because the person who is not spiritual looks at you like, okay, when you become this type of spiritual, right? You then lose all interest in everyday life, right? And because you lose all interest in everyday life, it's kind of like you almost seem odd to other people, right? Now, whether that's true or not, whether they're reading that or not, this is the point I'm making. When this is a type of spiritual enlightenment that people have been practicing, right? You're not really enlightened. Sorry to bust your bubble. And what I mean by that is because anybody can say, "Who the fuck are you? How are you gonna tell me I'm not enlightened?" That's true, right? But let's be honest. Part of spiritual, the spiritual program that has been going on is humans have thinking that they're superior to animals, right? And they're above animals and they're closer to God and blah 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 blah, right? So if you want to ask me who the fuck am I? How do I know? This is how I'm going to break it down to you, right? Like this. Okay, first of all, you have to pretend to be superior to animals, or you have to pretend that we're not animals, because you're missing this very, very obvious point. We are animals. We're animals that are evolving, right? And so what that means is, just like you can take an insect and compare them to domesticated animals, specifically cats and dogs. Cats and dogs can respond to their names. They could even understand 50 to 100 words. They even seem to have their own individual personalities. Whereas if you take an ant, let me skip the ants. If you take a termite, right? They don't have the individual personality, so it's not as visible as, or obvious as cats and dogs, because cats and dogs are on a high evolutionary path. Now, evolving doesn't actually mean better, right? It just means you're evolving where the spirit, the Hermeticists used to call it the spirit, the Indians call it the Akasha. This fifth element comes in and can spread, and usually spreads through your bloodstream, and then affects your cellular body, which then affects your mind, and you can perceive more things. You can tap into forces. There's forces in the universe that when you're in the animal mind, you can't tap into. The same way how you could be a human being, and you could be an animal, you could be a human being who's not evolved, who's just stagnant, and you're not going to tap into certain forces either, right? So what some people call magic is just being able to tap into forces that certain people who have not reformed the animal mind, they can't access, right? Now that's a big difference. That's a big difference of saying you're not an animal. And like I said, I'm spiritual. This is a spiritual channel, but I'm very scientific. So you can tell me all kind of stuff about evolution, and you can tell me anything you want to tell me. If you don't got the science behind it, I'm not going to respond to you. 2021, It's a new paradigm. You don't got the science behind it, I'm not responding to you. Largely because the same person who would tell me all this yap about evolution is not real, I'm pushing whatever, European constructs, blah, blah, blah. Like when it comes to the abstract world and magic, I guarantee you that the same individual telling me that can't do any, they wouldn't know, they couldn't actually project if you paid them. If you paid them to lie and said, come up with a good story, you actually project a story, they couldn't tell you. I mean, anybody who actually projects for real kind of knows when somebody's fake. You kind of know for real. Like, I'm not talking about projecting once or twice. I'm talking about projecting steadily, where you can start to understand the subtle differences between the astral and the physical world, right? All those people who tell me who talk about evolution is not real, blah blah blah, they have no magic stripes. They don't know anything about the abstract world other than what was said to them in the book. Just being honest. You don't like it, you don't like it. It's just the way it is, right? So the real way when you know that you are progressing enough, that you're on the true path and you actually becoming more enlightened, is when you become a better animal. Then you become a better human. Then you become a better spiritual human. Right? So humans are Homo sapiens, you become a spiritual sapien. Right? In order to become a spiritual sapien, you have to be a good human. In order to be a good human, you have to be a good animal. So what does being a good animal mean? Being a good animal means connecting to your ecosystem. When the Abrahamic religions and even the esoteric counterparts, so Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they have esoteric counterparts. Gnosticism for the Christians, Sufism for the Muslims, Kabbalah for the Jews, right? Or Judaism. They all speak about a fall, right? And whether we want to get into some moral code of what the fall is, right? We know this. We are not good animals. So we don't connect to the nature itself has an information network of exchange of information that it passes on. Certain species are better than others, right? So plants hear that signal better than animals, right? Plant-eating animals hear that signal better than meat-eating animals, right? It's a signal. It's like an internet that they hear, right? So I always use this story when years ago, and I think in 2010 when Asia had the tsunami, in 2009 I think. And, it could have been more recent. Like, let's say 2011. I don't remember. I think it's like 2011, right? And they always say like I think 200,000 people died, right? Including a lot of monks and a lot of Buddhist, spiritual holy men. And they said there were stories of animals going to high land. The animals saw it coming before the so-called monks did, right? And then yet, I'm going to have people who hear this and say evolution is not real, I'm not an animal, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm a spiritual being, right? You're going to hear all that, right? And, it is, they could have that opinion. And the reason why I'm making this video is because forget about the opinions, right? You begin to understand, for real, when you see nature a different way. Meaning when you connect back, when you can connect back and say, oh shoot, I hear that signal. Oh shoot, there's things in nature that shamans, like when you start to study like shamanism and animism and some of the traditional religions in Africa, like if you take that Sahel religion, right, in the Senegal region, right, and their tradition, they have stories of how you had animals, you had plants, you had humans, right? We had 3 tribes, right? And when we fell, all 3 were affected differently, right? Plants could no longer move, right? So they have consciousness. I mean, plants are major players in the ecosystem, but they can't physically, or even though plants do move, they move very slowly, right? So they said plants can't move, right? Then you had animals who they can't override their senses, right? So meaning if you put a slab of raw meat for a dog, the dog's gonna eat it. Dog is not gonna say, "Oh shoot, can you wait for me to cook? Can you cook it first before I eat the meat?" They can't override their senses. They'll eat that raw meat and kill themselves, right? So the animals can't override their senses. So when you look at the vibratory energy that's coming from an animal, and you perceive it as an animal, it's just a being who can no longer control their senses. They may be in the beginning of their journey, or they may be just on a different path. All paths don't mean that you have to go up and ascend, right? There's species going down, becoming part of the land. There's species going up, right? Doesn't mean one is better than the other. So animals can't control their senses. Humans don't connect naturally to the ecosystem the way we should. So that's why in a lot of styles of shamanism, they say animals and plants are the first teachers. The human fall is actually not as bad as the other two. It's just humans have more ego, right? So if a human says, oh, shoot, like how the shamans say, oh, I got to pay attention to the ecosystem. I got to pay attention to the animals and plants. I learn from them. When I learn from them, I eventually surpass them. And I don't want to surpass them just saying ego to like on the ego level of where I'm better than them. When I surpass them, I become a caretaker for nature. I become a better caretaker for nature because I can switch up. I can speak for different species of animals. You know, like a dog is only going to care about dog business. A rabbit is only going to care about rabbit business. As a human being, we got the ability to speak up for other species, right? And to caretake, to be their caretakers. So what some people mistranslate as angel, right? And then you have a whole bunch of people saying angels not real. When they say angel is just symbolic of the evolution of the human being who understands what I'm talking about, and they evolve to the next level where instead of being Homo sapiens, we're spiritual sapiens. It's not really that complicated. So when you're on that path, before you become a good spiritual sapien, you got to become a good Homo sapien, which is human. Before you become a good Homo sapien, you have to become a good animal. So when we fell, we're no longer good animals. So we no longer connect to the ecosystem the way we're supposed to, right? So a good example would be if you take domesticated like animals like dogs and cats. Like there's a specific reason why when the Egyptians depicted certain animals as gods, you weren't supposed to eat them, right? And you could go into the Indians as well with the cow. And part of that was because they understood that animal that you're seeing. So like, you know how you have animals and you have humans, right? But you have things in between which they're animals, but they could be animals on a higher evolutionary path than traditional animals, but not as elevated as humans, right? So sometimes those vibratory, like those spirits or those beings, those intelligences incarnate as domesticated animals like you see, goats, cows, dogs, rabbits, cats. I'm missing somebody, right? Right? They're in between, right? And then you could even include primates, whales, dolphins as well, right? One way to know that is when you're on that path, you change, right? So if you take a shark, for instance, sharks, in traditional shamanism, they understood. You take a shark is the same really being as they were 200 million years ago. But to be honest, like they haven't evolved much, right? Whales and dolphins have. So you could look on a spiritual standpoint and say, oh, shoot, whales and dolphins are more elevated if you're talking about evolving or in terms of ascension and the macabre bodies and rainbow bodies and all those things that people are obsessed with. With a shark, when they pass, they go back down, become part of the sea, become part of the earth. That's the difference, right? Those are things that when you're evolving, like not even evolving, when you tap into the internet network of nature, and the only way you can do that is to reverse the damage and bad decisions our ancestors made, then you say, oh shoot, I'm back. Oh shoot, my spiritual work has helped me fix that problem. Unfortunately, for most spiritual systems, they don't fix that problem, right? They basically are just humans who are practicing spirituality. So what ends up happening is the next stage of evolution, spiritual sapiens, right? They never get to that level because in order to become a spiritual sapien, you have to fix the problem that happened. Most of them don't. So what they do is they instead, even if they're real, even if they're a good system, you evolve a little bit spiritually, go to 7th dimension, boom, you're done. Like when you die, 6th dimension, boom, when you're done, when you die, when you decide to come back and incarnate again, you forget your memory and you go through that same cycle over and over and over again. So some people, when they die, they come back 4th dimension, come back 3rd. Die, go to 4th dimension, come back 3rd. Die, come to 4th dimension, come back 3rd, right? Such a being probably never going to be psychic, probably wouldn't really even have any type of desire to relearn spirituality. But the person who goes to 7th, comes back, naturally born more psychic, naturally born more like maybe a lot of people listening to this video, or I won't say a lot, but 30, 40%, who knows, right? They're born different, right? But not enough to break off the wheel. So they're still stuck because when they die, come back, they forget everything. When you become a spiritual, this is why in some types of Hermetic system, in some types of solar spiritual systems, when you develop, or even Gnosticism, when the Gnostics say you develop the Christ body, which is the 8th chakra, which is the halo, when you die, come back, you remember everything. As a child, even if you don't remember as a child, by 3, 4, 5 years old, comes back to you, boom, right? Then you look like a genius to other people. That's what Christ was. Just a person who came on this path and did it the way he's supposed to. And then if that person comes back again, right, they will remember all their memories. So we can get into Christ isn't real. Christ symbolically. Forget, I'm not going to say and argue Christ is real. Christ symbolically was such a being when the Gnostic developed that philosophy. It's not that complicated. In order to get to that level, which is like a spiritual sapien, you got to be good animal first, then good homo sapien, then spiritual sapien. Pretending the physical world doesn't exist, or overrating your ability of or your understanding of the abstract world, is just counterproductive. And even if you partially fix it, and you can go into some Eastern systems, and when you pass, go to the 6th and 7th dimension, like I said, you come back and do another incarnation, you're going to forget your memory, you're going to be in the same wheel again. That's the difference. So when you connected to nature, you understood, like in some types of African shamanism, they would say elephants, dolphins, and whales come before humans do. Right? Sometimes when people talk about ATRs, or African traditional religions, they talk about voodoo, obia, Ifa, certain types of Bantu spirituality, which is whether it's Palo, whether it's Hoodoo, right? There's many types of African spiritual systems. And you go traditionally outside those things. I mean, the Bantu systems cover that, right? But you go outside, especially the Ifas, the Voodoos, right? Outside that, they tell you like it's heavy shamanism. And in those, or animism, because shamanism is really from Central Asia, but it's heavy animism, it's heavy nature veneration of different spirits that the average person who's disconnected from nature cannot see, right? So when you start to understand and look at your environment differently, it opens up not only your environment, you start to understand the abstract world a lot better than others who haven't. People always ask me, oh, when you first came out, you making videos of dark treasures, you making videos of stuff that we never heard of before, right? Whole bunch of people would say, you're making that up. There's no books on it. Yes, the abstract world, I'm not making it up. The abstract world cannot be successfully decoded or explained to people who haven't done the necessary work. So most of the time when you see spiritual systems that are even effective, certain types of Taoism, certain types of yoga that's effective, they're still not going to the high abstract plane. When you go to the high abstract plane, you can't come back down here and explain that to a regular person. You're going to sound fucking crazy. But anyone who goes to the high abstract planes has to be in tune with the physical world as well, because the physical world locks you into that. That's what alchemy was about. The alchemist was able to have success on all dimensions. And when they had success in the physical world, aspects of the abstract world opened up to them on a way that somebody who's faking the funk, or somebody who wants to do a shortcut, who wants you to say, I just want to be spiritual, I don't care about the physical, they're going to be locked into a 6th and 7th dimensional pattern. It's a shame that science itself can confirm there's 10 dimensions. Most likely, based on the math, it's really 26 dimensions, right? But they can confirm 10. And you still got some spiritual motherfuckers talking about 7 dimensions. That tells you something. Motherfuckers are stagnant. Literally. And that stagnation has come from because you don't understand what truly enlightenment is. Reversing the mistakes of the past, and then opening up the future, and opening up abstract aspects of the future that you can't perceive. And what's abstract? I said that shit like 10 times. Abstract is concepts beyond time and space. Every concept that you guys have in your mind right now is based on time and space. Even when you say the word God, oh, that motherfucker is based in time and space too. You use the word God, that's kind of masculine, that's a certain language. You put an image of a male, right? You put an image of a human. The human image has only come in like 3-4 million years ago, so that's locked in the Pacific time and space. Very few. Your mind cannot consciously. You have to train yourself to consciously be able to understand abstract concepts. That's why eventually in certain types of metaphysics, people were into art. Understanding art, artists kind of naturally do that without being trained. So spiritualists would copy the artists to be able to understand abstract concepts. I hope that helps. Get into nature. Get into nature for real. Hugging trees is only part of it. Understanding the ecosystem. Understanding how worms, termites, fungi, bacteria, archaea, right, play in your everyday life and the life of civilization and the life of the network of species on Earth. Helping each other, exchanging information, and all using that to have a better place, and some species use that to become better. Humans supposed to use that to go from Homo sapien to spiritual sapien. Siris King. Till next time. Peace.